Can food be medicine? That is the idea of a new movement sweeping America. There's even pressure to teach it in medical schools. And today's episode of Great Stories in Bioethics, my personal YouTube channel, explores what's going on in some of the ethical issues. So the idea that what you put into your body can be harmful or good is not new. It's found in the writings of the ancient physician Hippocrates. It's found in ancient Chinese medicine and in the Indian medicine called the Vedic. So we know that there are bad things that you can put into your body, like call them poisons, things like alcohol, foods that are high in salt, foods with too much sugar, mega vitamins, mega supplements, tobacco, opiates, all kinds of things are bad for you. And we know this, and medical students should learn about that. We also know that some people are allergic to certain things like gluten, or they're lactose intolerant, and they can even have anaphylactic shock if they eat certain bad things. And again, medical students and nurses should learn about these, and there's always been a course in nutrition in medical schools and nursing schools to talk about that. But the new movement has a good thing and maybe some bad things. It basically claims that we have a system treating sick people and not a health system. So it would like to prevent sickness by healthy eating rather than treat sickness afterwards. Is that possible? Maybe. Also, it goes even further in claiming that food can treat illness and maybe cure it or correct some of its defects. And that is really a big claim that we see often in alternative medicine and people trying to sell stuff. And that's where the ethics really comes in. So it's undeniable that there are people trying to sell us bad food. I call them big agra, like big tobacco or big opioids, nicotine. They're trying to sell us foods that are highly processed or ultra processed, as it's called. There's a lot of salt and sugar, or carbonated sodas. All these things are bad for us and they can be addictive. And it would certainly be better not eat those and to eat more fiber and more what we all know are healthy foods. It's also true that we know that there's a lot of diseases caused by unhealthy eating, coronary artery diseases, some cancers, maybe some dementia, type 2 diabetes. We know that a huge percent of teenagers and people in their 20s in undeveloped countries and poor counties in America they're overweight. They used to be called morbidly obese, and it's partly because of the way they eat. And it all could be much better. Is the solution to doing what Tulane Medical School is doing in Louisiana, where medical students and nursing students actually are in cooking classes, learning how to cook healthy, and where it's recommended, they hope, that insurance companies will pay for personalized, healthy meals delivered to patients? I don't know if that's the ideal or not. So let's look at maybe the downside of what's going on with the healthy food as medicine movement. So just looking at some of the writings in the food as medicine movement, I think there's a lot of exaggeration, there's a lot of oversimplification, there's some moralism, and there's some holier-than-thou attitudes. It seems to me that the food as medicine movement is associated with healthy, rich, heterosexual white people and is not really applicable to ordinary people and also to ordinary physicians who are stressed for time and really can't talk about diets and personal meals. There is something good that can become of all this, which I'll explain at the end, but I think what we've seen here is a shift and emphasis in medical schools on what used to be called the social determinants of health. We talk about food deserts and ancestral patterns of bad eating to more of a personal responsibility focus. And that also has some negative consequences. And what are those negative consequences? Well, being healthy and living a long having a long life is due to how you eat. What happens if you're sick and you don't live a long life? It seems to imply that you ate poorly and you could have eaten better. And so you're responsible for your sickness. That is just the opposite of what used to be taught in medical schools, that it was more of a social, economic problem. So there's a possibility of shaming people for being sick. I find many of the claims that I see in foods and medicine to be exaggerated, what food can do. Food can't reverse cancer, it can't reverse dementia, it can't change coronary artery disease. Eating better might help prevent type 2 diabetes, but once you have type 2 diabetes, I don't think it's going to help much. So some of them studies about healthy eating and food as medicine do make some claims about starting to have evidence, but the studies are very small, and sometimes they're anecdotal, and sometimes it's just one person who looks very healthy arguing about what helped her, especially these people called social medical influencers. This is not reliable evidence. There is some personal responsibility for eating, of course, but there's also some truth on the other side. I mean, if people live in food deserts, which means they don't have easy access to fresh fruit and vegetables that are cheap, if people will have to work 2 jobs and they don't have time to cook healthy, they have to take care of a bunch of kids as a single mother, it's not realistic to think that they can carefully shop at different fresh markets and cook very healthfully for their kids. They're not like NFL quarterback Tom Brady, who's a vegan and was a personal chef. So we have to be real about real people. I think another thing we have to do, always in bioethics, we have to follow the money. And there is an enormous amount of money pushing the food as medicine movement. We know that organic produce costs twice as much as ordinary produce. We know there's really no evidence that it's better for you. And sometimes it has a very dangerous form of E. coli in it. So there's that, but there are people just trying to sell everything.
I used to be depressed before I used Dayglow gummies, only $2 a day.
In terms of what you put into your body, there's people trying to sell men testosterone treatments. There are people selling ketamine for depression, schizophrenia. There's all these new infusion clinics opening up everywhere that are basically cash clinics, aren't covered by insurance. People are arcade theaters trying to sell people peptides. People are taking, there's something called the enhancement games where anything goes, and for athletic competitions, taking all kinds of steroids and deer urine. I think all this is very dangerous. And there's a whole bunch of people making a whole bunch of money and trying to tell people they can cure everything by what they're buying on the internet. This kind of goes back to the last episode about AI medical companions and how dangerous that all can be. So finally, the idea that food is medicine kind of takes the joy out of eating. Food is social. Food can be, part of your ethnic traditions, birthday parties. We don't want to get too clinical about food. There's a role for people who are foodies in the world and just, live for the next great restaurant they're going to. There's also a great danger here in what is called in food ethics orthorexia. The idea that you have to be pure in your eating. Already people who are in our thin culture obsessed about thinness on the verge of anorexia, and orthorexia could come right here and become a disease in itself. So I can't see this as really being beneficial as being taught in medical and nursing schools, but I can see one thing on the horizon that might come good of all this. So there is a new movement in medicine to combine big data and personalized genomics and use AI and have like a personalized prescription for individual patients. I think this is something that wouldn't necessarily be by physicians, but somebody could offer people where you would know a lot about your personal genes and what kind of things you could tolerate or might be helpful. For example, some people who eat garlic or onions powerfully smell of it. Most people don't. It's a gene-based. Some people, when they drink alcohol, metabolize it very well. They have a high degree of acetaldehyde, which is kind of a poison. They get bad hangovers. Other people aren't even phased. That's all genetics. It's important things to know. It's important to know if you have a peanut allergy. It's important to know if you have a gluten problem. And it's maybe like the Mediterranean diet would be great for you. Maybe it would be terrible. Maybe a carnivore diet would be great for you. All these things could be told to people, and they can have more control over how they eat. So they could sort of self-medicate by avoiding some things that are foods that are bad for them and pursuing foods that are good for them. I think in that sense, food and medicine and AI could be very beneficial. Maybe that's the future of the food as medicine movement. We'll see. That's it for today. I hope you learned something. If you did, share, give me a thumbs up. See you next Tuesday.